Lecture topic: Joy from Taubah.
There are many things that are explained in the Hadith Sharif by way of examples. And the example is meant to bring a very, very important aspect to the hearts and minds of each person. And the examples are meant to give courage, to give hope, to warn, depending on what the aspect is. If it's meant to be something about a warning, the example is meant to shake a person. And if it's something to give hope, then it's meant to develop that hope. So among the examples that are in the Hadith Sharif, Nabi Sallallahu gives the example of what makes Allah Ta'ala happy. So now something that's being explained by way of an example, this is meant to really highlight this. And the example that Nabi Sallallahu gives is the example of the person who is traveling in a desert. He's got his provisions on his camel, and then now he stops to rest for a while under a tree. And when he wakes up, suddenly he sees the camel has disappeared. The camel has disappeared. That was his mode of transport in the middle of the desert. There's no lift that's going to come anytime soon. And then all his provisions are there. So the water, food he had was on the camel. That has disappeared. So there's nothing available anywhere around. Now, middle of the desert, the closest place a person might reach by the time he walks might be days. And water he might not get for that extent of time as well. Food also the same. So now when 2-3 days are going to pass in this way, person is not going to manage to walk that distance in the harsh climate of the desert. The only thing that is in front of him is then death. So can we imagine a person now preparing for death? There is no chance now. Everything is lost, and the only thing that is now to wait for is death. And he finally, after looking around, doesn't find it. He's waiting now for death. He goes and lies down again. What else to do besides wait for death? And then falls asleep. After suddenly some time passes, his eyes open. When his eyes open, he sees the camel standing right next to him, and with all his provisions. So the situation which was totally hopeless now suddenly has become full of hope again, because he was now preparing for death. So what excitement will overcome him at that time? To highlight that excitement, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that he, in that excitement, to express his shukr to Allah Ta'ala, he wants to say, Ya Allah, you are my Rabb and I am your slave. He even mixes that up. He doesn't even realize what he's saying. He says, Ya Allah, I am your Rabb and you are my slave. He says that purely out of his overexcitedness. He doesn't realize what he's saying. He made a mistake without realizing what he's saying. Now, this is the detailed example that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gives. These examples were not just for the sake of, as a person now will hear an example. It's meant to go into a detail of an example so that this sits so deeply down into the heart of a person that every time he thinks of this, it will spur him into action. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says how excited this person got. He got so excited that he didn't know what he's saying. Allah Ta'ala gets more happier with that servant who makes Toba. Now, Toba is not something to be done on some occasion. When the month of Ramadan will come, now we make Toba, or now we're waiting, okay, we know the Zul Hijjah, first 10 days of Zul Hijjah, very virtuous. So now we're waiting for Zul Hijjah. We don't know whether we'll see Zul Hijjah or not. The person is waiting for the day of Jumu'ah, that too is far away still. Let alone the day of Jumu'ah, forget tomorrow, you can't even wait for tonight. So Toba is a need that we have to keep making Toba. When a person has some clothing, so he wears it, wears it, even if it was just hanging somewhere in the drawer for a long time, says, no, this is now too long, we didn't wear it, still must get washed. And what if it's being worn around, he's walking around with it, after 1 day, 2 days, it's too much now, it has to go into the washing. So the clothing has to go into the washing, everything has to get washed. The heart also, likewise, has to keep getting washed. And we are all the time getting affected by nafs and shaitan. So we have to constantly keep washing the heart. And the soap and water that washes the heart is Toba and Istighfar. So to be daily, this is not something that for occasions, once in a year, on once a week also. This is a daily thing. Daily we should be sincerely, deeply making Toba with this very conscious aspect in our hearts and minds. This is a means of getting the closeness of Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala becomes very pleased with that servant who makes sincere Toba. And we need to keep washing that heart, scrubbing it by means of istighfar. This is what's going to keep our hearts clear, especially in acquiring the knowledge of ilm, the knowledge of deen. This knowledge of deen comes into a clean heart. The more we keep cleansing this heart, scrubbing it, then the Quran Sharif will come into our hearts. Then the knowledge of the Quran Sharif, of the Hadith Sharif will come in. This noor will then enter our hearts. Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq.
अल्लाह अल्लाह कैसा प्यारा नाम है, आशिकों का मीना और जाम है।